but certainly that you're very welcome here in the House of Commons and to be with us today. I just want to say a few words about Cyprus. We know that it's very important to many people, not only here in our part of London and the part of both Nick's and David's, but also other parts of the world indeed. And we all do long for the day that there is a settlement, an agreement, and the island is able to come together once more. But some of us have been calling, both here in Parliament and indeed out in the community, for the issue of Famagusta particularly. And we feel that action and progress could happen unilaterally in regard to any kind of division or indeed reconciliation of the island. So we feel that could go ahead. And having visited Famagusta and that area, I would certainly like to see the port being allowed to use, and I think that would be good not only for the national trade, but also on an international basis as well. And these are issues that I know that David certainly has taken up with the Foreign Office in regard to putting some pressure upon all those involved, all those parties. We are expecting some other MPs along this afternoon as well. I know that Andy Love's confirmed that he will be attending, and also Sir Rotzer Γκέιλ will be coming in at one point. As I said, it's a very busy day for some reason in Parliament today, so people will be coming in as well. But I would like to first of all ask the President, not the Mayor, to say a few words on behalf of the problems of Cyprus particularly, and how, if you can explain how we can help as British parliamentarians. Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of Famagusta Association, UK and our bi-communal committee, we would like to welcome the distinguished guests attending our meeting. Specifically, we would like to thank the members of Parliament of the APPG on Cyprus, specifically Dr. Matthew Όφορντ, Chair of the British Cyprus All-Party Parliamentary Group, and the Vice Chair, Dέiβιντ Μπάροους, for organizing this important event, and other MPs, of course, for attending and participating in the discussion. We would like to stress that this bi-communal meeting is the first one on its kind that is organized in the House of Commons, and we sincerely like to thank the APPG for being the host of this evening. We particularly welcome the Council from the Cyprus High Commission, Solon Sava. The Mayor of Famagusta is apologizing for not being able to be here for this meeting today, but instead we have with us representatives of the Famagusta municipality, local councillors Χρύσανθος Ζαννέτου and Kωνσταντίνος Τουμάζης, whom we welcome. This is an important and a very special occasion for us because the British members of Parliament embrace and support our efforts for the return of Famagusta to its lawful citizens, as it was agreed in the high-level agreements between Kyprianou Dektash of 1979 and the different United Nations Security Council resolutions, such as the 550 of the 1984 and the European Union declarations. The Famagusta Association of Great Britain is representing thousands of people who are displaced citizens of the Cypriot town of Famagusta and are now citizens of Britain. The association has embarked on a variety of campaigns to achieve the maximum possible pressure on Turkey so that it implements the high-level agreements and the United Nations Security Council resolutions to returning the city of Famagusta to its lawful inhabitants under the legitimate government of Cyprus. One of the results of our hard work was the signing of a petition for the return of Famagusta to its lawful inhabitants, in accordance with the high-level agreements between the two community leaders, the United Nations Security Council resolutions, as well as the European Union resolutions and declarations. Our petition has been signed by over 50,000 people, including many dignitaries. It is very important to point out that Turkish Cypriots worked with us closely for achieving these brilliant results. The petition was handed to the Honourable Prime Minister David Cameron, the British MPs
and the Foreign Office. Also to the former President of the European Commission, Mr. José Manuel Barroso, and the new elected President, Mr. Jean-Claude Juncker, the former President of the European Council, Mr. Herman Van Rompuy, and his successor, Donald Tusk, the President of the European Parliament, Mr. Martin Schulz, the leaders of the main British political parties, the General Secretary of the United Nations, the President of the United States of America, the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, and other leaders of the European Union. At the same time, we included in our campaign the results of the independent research work carried out in the occupied part of Cyprus by the Turkish Cypriot organization Famagusta Initiative, which clearly showed that 73% of the respondents, Turkish Cypriots and settlers, voted in favor of the return of Famagusta to its lawful inhabitants, and only 4% were against. Both parties share the same belief that the return of the town to its lawful inhabitants and the Famagusta port, initially under the administration of the United Nations and the European Union, will create the conditions for carrying out legally international trade. This will also pave the way for a comprehensive economic development program for the city to the benefit of both communities. These benefits shall strengthen the bond between the two communities, which through socioeconomic and cultural cooperation will serve as a catalyst and the driving force in reaching the final solution to the Cyprus problem. As a result, most of these centers of decision-making embraced and adopted our position. For the first time, we heard from the State Department of the USA, the European Commission, the European Parliament, and the European Council that priority in the Cyprus negotiations is to be given to the return of Famagusta to its legal inhabitants. We are proud to stress that due to our efforts and the campaign, motions at the House of Commons were discussed and declarations of the European Union were issued, all supporting our position. Our association is very grateful and obliged to the MPs comprising the APPG for Cyprus for all their efforts to achieve the above aims. Taking into consideration, however, the negative and provocative role of Turkey on many occasions, we are asking the APPG to take a more active part. The UK is one of the guarantor powers of Cyprus' independence and sovereignty. We are asking the British government, and especially the Foreign Office, to change its policy of one of rhetoric support to an active and constant pressure on Turkey to remove its army of occupation from the island and work for a lasting solution. Unfortunately, the provocative actions of Turkey violating the Cypriot exclusive economic zone the last few months has created a negative climate for the ongoing negotiations as the sea territory of the Republic of Cyprus was violated illegally. The British government should pressurize Turkey to abstain from recent violations of the sovereign rights of the exclusive economic zone of the Republic of Cyprus and to end its illegal military occupation of the northern part of the island. Britain should condemn the illegal actions of Turkey against a small and defenseless European Union member state. There is no doubt that this state of affairs creates a status of instability and illegality, which encourages tensions and even hostilities in the area. Turkey should be asked to revoke its NAFTEX immediately and refrain from any violation of the sovereign rights of the Republic of Cyprus in the exclusive economic zone. Instead, Turkey must actively support the negotiations aiming at a fair, comprehensive, and viable settlement under the auspices of the United Nations Secretary-General and in accordance with the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions. The British government should call on Turkey to begin withdrawing its forces from Cyprus and hand back Famagusta to the government of the Republic of Cyprus in accordance with the United Nations Security Council Resolution 550 of 1984 and different European Union declarations, as well as the high-level agreements between the leaders of the two communities, Kyprianou and Dertash. The British government should also ask Turkey to create the conditions so that the inhabitants of the city of Famagusta return and resettle in their homes under conditions of security and peace. Further, that the port of Famagusta be also handed back under initial supervision by the European Union or the United Nations in order to promote a positive climate conducive to the successful resolution of the ongoing reunification negotiations and to allow both communities in Cyprus to trade in a legal manner and cooperate on a day-to-day basis. This confidence-building measure will become a bridge and a symbol of a future united Cyprus. Projects of reconstructing and regenerating the city of Famagusta would bring political, economic, and social benefits to the whole of Ireland. The British government should actively support the reunification of Cyprus on the basis of a fair and viable settlement for both communities, based on a bicommunal, bizonal federation with political equality, one that unites the single state of the Republic of Cyprus, a member of the United Nations, a member of the European Union, and a member of the Commonwealth. Thank you very much. Very quickly, a message on behalf of the Mayor of Famagusta, Mr. Alexis Galanos. Dear members of Parliament, my fellow friends of Cyprus and Famagusta, dear friends from Famagusta and Cyprus, I regret not being among you today due to serious commitments that kept me in Cyprus, having to do with the restructuring of the local authorities in my capacity as the President of the Union of Cyprus Municipalities. I would like to express my deep appreciation for the arrangement of this meeting and let you know that I personally and the Municipal Council that we do appreciate your efforts to discuss the continued illegal occupation of Cyprus and therefore Famagusta for the last 41 years. I consider the exchange of views regarding the opening up of the illegally occupied town of Famagusta to its lawful citizens as very constructive. It is needless to repeat here the various points that were raised in the numerous United Nations and the European Union decisions or regulations involved pertaining to the return of Famagusta to its lawful citizens. Such resolutions that should be implemented are the United Nations Security Council Resolution 550 of 1984, the 789/1992, and the European Council Resolutions of 2009, 1334 of 2010, the 0039/2012. In spite of all the United Nations and European Union decisions and resolutions about Cyprus and Famagusta, Turkey continues its illegal occupation of the island and violates the exclusive economic zone of Cyprus with its barbarous vessel. We strongly believe that we all share a vision that the return of Famagusta could be a great step towards encouraging the necessary psychological environment for the solution of the Cyprus problem and the reunification of this beautiful European island. Once more, we express our appreciation and gratitude for your fair and impartial attitude towards the need of justice in Cyprus and helping the efforts for reunification of the island, and we look forward to seeing you in Cyprus in the near future. Thank you.
Right. I would like to mention that I'm a member of and on the management committee of a Turkish Democratic Association of Turkish Cypriots. This has been in existence since the early 1970s. We have quite a significant number of members and even on our own premises. We're not directly affiliated to any political party, but we do work with any political organization, civil society groups, or professional organizations, artists, and for that matter, with anyone on both sides of the divide and outside the island who would support the concept of a united federal solution. We are based only in the UK, and our focus has always been the Turkish Cypriot community in the UK. The Cyprus problem, or what we call the Cyprus tragedy, has been running now for 60 years. If we accept that 1955 was the starting point of the rise of nationalism, we have always supported the Cyprus entity rather than the motherland solutions. To outsiders, the Cyprus problem appears to be one of never-ending intercommunal quarrel with no solutions in sight. However, if you zoom deeper into the historical facts, you will find something quite different. Against the rising tide of nationalism, there has always been a movement from both communities in favor of Cyprus becoming our common homeland for all who live in it. In fact, extreme nationalists from both sides have claimed the lives of many people, even within their own community, for daring to make a stand in the name of peace. But the biggest of all calamities were the intercommunal conflict of 1963 and 64 and the 1974 coup and Turkey's intervention. Without going into elaborate history of the Cyprus problem, we are today dealing with its aftermath, which is still waiting settlement. Over 2,000 people missing, thousands lost their lives, hundreds and thousands of Turkish and Greek Cypriot refugees displaced. 40 years on, and the pain still continues. The inability, or rather the unwillingness of political leaders to come up with settlement solutions has taken its toll on both communities. People cannot even plan tomorrow, let alone for the future of their children, and uncertainty is an additional curse which is added to the suffering. Without any disrespect to what the Greek Cypriot people have gone through, Turkish Cypriots have suffered to the extent that they are almost an extinct community. The referendum of 2004 carried a huge hopes for Turkish Cypriots and was also a moment that coincided with Erdogan's hopes of joining the European Union. Although Greek Cypriots express certain reservations and possibly some justifiable fears of some aspects of the Έναν plan, the no vote from the Greek Cypriot side had a massive demoralizing impact on the Turkish Cypriots. Those who spent a big part of their lives campaigning for a united Cyprus experienced nothing less than bereavement. People actually wept with mixed emotions of disbelief, anger, hopelessness, and the deliberate humiliation from those of the Turkish Cypriots who were campaigning for Mr. Dantaş's no vote. The second biggest propaganda line of those who have always wanted partition is now, we said yes, the Greeks said no. And that would be the end of it, even though it is a little dishonest of them to say we said yes. The flow of settlers has not stopped or even slowed down. It does not look like it will stop at any time soon either. To make it worse, Turkish Cypriots find themselves unsuitable participants in the kind of economy developing and unable to compete in the labor market with the settler population offering their labor at a cheaper rate in the private sector, Turkish Cypriots have been resorting to migration. This took on a new momentum following the 2003 when an opening was punctured on the border and Turkish Cypriots began to obtain EU passport and Cypriot passports, and has been worse in recent years following the recession in the south. Thousands who were working in the south were affected by the financial collapse in the economy of the south. Due to all these factors, Turkish Cypriots have justifiably been feeling a very strong sense of urgency and the feeling that time is fast running out for them. They are convinced that Turkey is carrying out a deliberate policy of not only creating the conditions for their migration, but it is also implementing a deliberate policy of assimilation, integration of Turkish Cypriots economically, politically, socially, and culturally. This culminated in the biggest ever turnout of Turkish Cypriots marching against Cemil Çiçek's economic package on the 11th of January and the 2nd of March of 2011. The two-day march were named communal survival. Even Denktaş's son and wife had joined those marching. Serdar Denktaş had openly called on Turkey to allow us to be the masters of our own destiny. This from someone who is a partitionist. Erdogan called for the rounding up of the so-called ringleaders of collaboration with the Greeks. We have also been experiencing a certain level of human rights abuses. For example, 2 years ago, a delegation of trade union leaders announced that they would come to London on the invitation of the Friends of Cyprus. The police paid a visit to each and every one of them and wanted to know their intentions and who they were going to see. There is also a litigation process now going on against people who have raised the Cyprus flag. Having said all this, the question is, are we doomed, or is there a way out? We feel that the remedy to our plight lie in the United Federal Republic of Cyprus, bicommunal with political equality, single citizenship as set out in the Denktaş-Makarios and Denktaş-Kyprianou agreements. The status quo has to be ended. On deep analysis, there are other factors that give us some hope of ending this nightmare. We know that Cyprus carries a huge importance for much more than its weight in population and square mileage size. We don't want this to sound like a blackmail, but you have the sovereign bases. We now have natural gas. Turkey wants to enter the European Union, which the UK government supports. Instability and the random playing of war drums is not in anyone's interest. Above all, the 1960 Zurich and London Agreement specifically puts Britain in a position of responsibility as a guarantor power. Some people say that failure to carry out this responsibility as a guarantor power forfeits your right to the sovereign basis. This is a view often coming up in current discussion forums now. This is something the UK government or government strategists should not ignore. What can a UK government do? Simply much more than it has been the case in the past. The following are some examples. Basically, what the Turkish government ought to be, that the Turkish government ought to be a part of the solution rather than the problem. That Turkey has to refrain from sending warships or ships for the exploration of new gas fields. The UK government ought to take much more active part in encouraging a good outcome from the intercommunal talks, if they start, that is. We saw this happen in Northern Ireland with the achievement of the Good Friday Agreement, because there was a the British government actually put its backing behind the Good Friday Agreement. There are many voices in the business of lobbying, but we think that up till now, UK politicians seem to be stuck in the mud of trying to please two sides. They must change their perception of two conflicting sides and see the push in the direction of a common interest. There are two important issues currently in the limelight that can prove to be a catalyst in opening up new dimensions. One is the return of the empty town of Varasha to its rightful owners. Development of Varasha is a huge economic potential for everybody in Cyprus. This will generate economic activity that can be shared by all Cypriots. But even on the issue of Varasha, those who want to continue with the status quo are now coming up with a new so-called evidence that Turks have been the rightful owners since the Ottoman period. It is a deliberate attempt to introduce confusion. The reverse question can be put to them as to why do they keep it empty if the owners are indeed Turkish Cypriots. The second issue is the opening up of the Famagusta port facility for both communities under the potentially a UN administration. This will have a very far-reaching beneficial effect as well, and not only in terms of economic activity to both communities, but a psychological benefit in creating confidence, and will also introduce opportunities for both Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots to work together. Right. In summary, we are not asking you to take sides in favor of one side or against another, but to help and push all parties to become part of the solution, beneficial to all. We feel that the British government not only has the responsibility to all the Cypriots, but also it has the capability, and hopefully one day will rejoice in being able to contribute to achieving a resolution or a happy ending to the problem that has been dragging on for so many generations now. We have been more vigorous and much more deep. We have seen much more vigorous and much more deeply entrenched conflicts resolved. South Africa, Northern Ireland, Rwanda are a few examples. We feel that as the APPG, presumably you can put these points to the government and hopefully they will listen to you. And I believe this is the feeling of most Cypriots, Turkish and Greek Cypriots. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Vasily and Ferdi. Thank you very much, the Famagusta Association and the All-Party Parliamentary Group. I was involved in initiating this meeting because what I wanted us to have, which is what sadly is a unique but overdue meeting, is one which is recognising from hearing sort of by a communal voice supporting the return of Famagusta. And that is the primary focus of this meeting. We would want, as an all-party parliamentary group for Cyprus, to be in a position where we wouldn't spend our time, sadly, talking about what was described as a problem and a tragedy. For the time when we can see a reunified island of Cyprus on a just basis, that we're then able to talk about the wonderful opportunities and the important strategic value, and we're able to talk about the beautiful island of Cyprus in a way that goes beyond the issue of problem and tragedy. But we are where we are, and for far too long. And that's why I was seeking to ensure what can we do, and how can we be that proactive voice and ensure that we do what we all do. I mean, you're speaking to the converted here in terms of we are all out there doing all we can, speaking up for Cyprus, asking questions, challenging ministers all the time about the issue of Cyprus. But what can we do collectively with the community to seek, particularly when looking at the issue of Famagusta, to seek to see that catalyst to open doors, whether it's trade, but to justice and to a reunified island. And no better way of hearing that voice is to hear from both Vasilis and Ferdy. So I thank you both very much for being able to say that this issue for all Cypriots. In fact, this is not just a special interest group. As welcome as the Famagusta Association, and they do make their voice very loudly heard to myself and others regularly, it is not just an issue for the Famagusta Association, it's not just an issue for Cypriots or both communities, it's an issue for all who are concerned about justice and all who are concerned about humanity and human rights. And that's why we need to raise the game. And no better way from doing that, and no more obvious way, very apparently for all of us who've been to Cyprus, have we seen that, as we've seen the village frozen in time, no more obvious injustice do we see anyone who goes near to the fences and sees that. But we all recognise that. Now, what can we do about it? I just want to talk very briefly what we can do about it, because that's what you want to know. We've had the petition. We've all been together. We were there on the steps of number 10 to deliver that petition. 50,000 is a very good tribute to you all for the huge number who are concerned. That went to the Prime Minister. He did actually respond very positively. His words are genuine. He's someone who said, both personally but also in the letter, he said how he is committed to seek that return. He has followed up, as have the Minister of Europe, saying on a number of meetings, not least with Turkey, where they are following up the issue and the need to comply with the resolutions which you've said. You've made reference and you've said to us, look, there's a now European Union Parliament declaration. Can we not do a similar declaration here? And that's what you've come to us previously and you want us to address. You say you don't just want the rhetoric, you want to see us active. Hopefully you'll know that we aren't here full of rhetoric. We are wanting, and we are doing all we can as parliamentarians to press the case. I would say that there are early day motions have been tabled. There are those that sign those that, as a matter of course, do not sign those, and those have been tabled. Those are traditional ways of a motion going down in one sense. But there is another form, and I know we've spoken about this, about whether there could be a motion before the House, not least a backbench business motion. We are running out of days of this Parliament, but my commitment to you with other colleagues is we will put that before the Backbench Business Committee to make the case and to put as a stake in the ground, whether it's in this Parliament or the next Parliament, that we need to have a substantive motion that the House is able to consider on the issue of Famagusta. So we will do that. It won't have escaped you that there's an election somewhat 69 days away, and I think it's important that not only, hopefully, manifestos, and this is across party, although you'll see Conservative members of Parliament here, this is an all-party parliamentary group, and we will look to see that in manifestos there's a clear commitment to the reunification of Cyprus, which we would expect to see as a clear foreign policy objective, and we'll make sure and seek to ensure that's happened. But at the election and with candidates, I think you should focus on the issue of Famagusta and say, okay, let's see how practical you are in showing this rhetoric as action. No better way than in terms of Famagusta to ensure that, yes, our candidate's going to say, we're going to make it a commitment when we return in a new Parliament to ensure that Famagusta is right up there as a parliamentary motion, right up there as a foreign policy objective, to seek that our concerns as guarantor powers for the sovereignty of Cyprus, for the issue of human rights, that Famagusta can't continue to be that frozen village, can't continue to have that injustice. And it makes no practical, makes no economic, makes no just sense for Famagusta to be frozen out. So we will press on that. And I say just, this is an issue for Parliament. It is also an issue for the community. I say this representing perhaps the constituency that has the largest numbers of Greek Cypriots and Turkish Cypriots as a grouping. And it's an issue for, that's why it's so welcome, the joint voice, because we need to see this as an issue for all of us to take up. I mean, we have concerns, we had just a parliamentary debate, there's many of them about Gaza. And the issue, the call goes out to free Gaza and so forth. But and where's the call to go out to free Famagusta? This should be an issue that the young as well as the old take up as a cause. And we all have it on ourselves to ensure where we have the armbands or the Twitter, the hashtags, that to free Famagusta is something which is embraced by all Cypriots and all those of good conscience. Thank you.
It's brilliant.
1 minute, so I've got to go.
So he's got to go. Yeah.
Hello, my apologies. I have to leave in 1 minute because I'm secretary of the 1922, which is meeting next door, and they can't start without me. But what I would like to say is, first of all, thank you very much for your presentations. 2 quick observations, because I support entirely what David has said, is that I think you bring in the international perspective to it. The other examples around the world where there has been a success, coupled with David's call that Famagusta should be at a high mark on the agenda and that we should join the calls that we hear for other problems around the world. I think we as parliamentarians can do something about that. But I'm also touched by all of my numbers of visits that I have made to Cyprus, is that I often feel, listening to the voice where there are not the politicians speaking, you spoke, I think, for many of the citizens that we meet right across the island who actually do want to see the politicians act, but sometimes we don't hear the voice of the citizens through the politicians, and I think you expressed that superbly today, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you.
I'm not a citizen of Famagusta, but I am a citizen of Morphu. And I know over 32 years now of experience of what you so referred to as the Cyprus tragedy, which I think is a better description than the Cyprus problem. I know very well indeed the issues. People tend to forget that Turkish Cypriots have found themselves almost aliens in their own land, in the occupied territory. And while we tend to make greater contact with our Greek Cypriot friends, it is an absolute fact that for many Turkish Cypriots, this is a huge tragedy as well. And what we all want to achieve, and what we've all been working to achieve, and will go on working to achieve, is the unification of the island, the removal of troops from another country who have no place in a member state of the European Union, is the restoration of property where humanly possible, is the right of the freedom of movement of people to live and to work wherever they like, in freedom and in harmony. And the thing that struck me over my 32 years of contact has been that fundamentally there are 2 Cypriot communities that want to be able to live and to work together, and many of whom, up until the most recent generation, have spoken each other's languages, drunk each other's coffee, played each other's card games, shared each other's bars, enjoyed each other's lives. And we want to see the day when that situation is restored, when people can actually once again live in harmony on the island of Cyprus. Now, I don't believe that a guarantor power, the United Kingdom, can have achieved the unification of the 2 sides in Northern Ireland and brought together what had been warring communities and facilitated the restoration of peace in that province, but cannot make more effort to bring about the achievement of a resolution to the Cyprus tragedy. And I think that the steps that have been outlined here this afternoon, the opening up of Varosha and the restoration of the use of the port of Famagusta, with all the economic benefits that both of those moves would make, while they must not be seen as an end in themselves, would most certainly be a very significant step towards confidence building and ultimately towards the final solution that we all want to see, which is the reunification of the island under one government with one representation properly within the European Union. We will go on working for that. We will go on pressing our government until greater attention is paid. You can all play your part and please help us to do so, by making sure that, particularly, as has been said this afternoon, in the run-up to the general election, whatever your party politics are here, you make certain that the case for Cyprus, for a unified Cyprus, is brought home, is rammed home to the people of all parties who are standing in our elections here. The more people we get on side, the more members of Parliament of all parties that we get on side in this House of Commons, the more weight our arguments will carry. And I believe, and I still believe, that a resolution can and will be achieved. Thank you. I've got to go next door. Thank you.